Good day, everyone. I'm Kevin Galetz, and I'm a program facilitator with working with the Regina District Industry Education Council in Sunwest School Division. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Kyle Blazek, a graduate of Rosetown Central High School who works as a hydrogeologist. Kyle will tell us what the occupation is all about and outline some of the work and opportunities that he's had in this unique line of work. Just a reminder before we begin, this session is being recorded and will appear on the RDIEC YouTube channel for you or others to view in the future. Just go to the RDIEC website at www.rdiec.ca to see the YouTube channel. Thanks for taking time to do this today, Kyle, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. As mentioned, I am Kyle Blazek, and I am a geologist with Clifton Engineering. The picture you see here on this first slide, that's from when I was a student in university working at a uranium exploration camp up in Nunavut, and there's no road, so it's only accessible by helicopter there, and we were just arriving in the camp. All right, so my job description, it can be completely depends on the projects, really. Basically, for me, I'm a consultant, and so I am completing projects based on the client's needs, and that can often include geological or geophysical logging and interpretation, the site supervisor for drilling programs. You're collecting maybe groundwater or surface water samples and doing EM or electromagnetic surveys. A lot of my jobs have been drilling projects, and the types of drilling rigs could be sonic, auger, mud rotary. It kind of depends on how deep you're going and what the overall goal is. To succeed in this role, it is best to be organized, be able to adapt to changing conditions, be comfortable supervising subcontractors, have great communication with the team and with the client, and be fiscally responsible with the budget. A love of the outdoors and exploring new places is a bonus. This work can sometimes be remote and require long periods away from home. When I started, I still remember my first project my field project when I went out, and it can be intimidating, just kind of thrown into the role. Now, I went out with someone, but being fresh out of school, it just can be intimidating being in charge and being a supervisor to a bunch of people who are much older than you and who know what you're doing. So you just kind of fake it till you make it. Most of the time, I am here in the office in Saskatoon, but I'd say now roughly 30% of the time I am away working at various places, just depending on the project. The first picture there, I was doing some groundwater sampling for a potash mine out by the Manitoba border. And the second picture there, that's me in Nunavut. I was out doing an electromagnetic survey there. The equipment used varies on the project, but it can often include various types of drill rigs, as I mentioned before. The picture there is a sonic drill rig. Sonic rigs are each type of drilling rig has its pros and cons, I guess, and it completely depends on the purpose of the project. For sonic drill rigs, you get nice continuous runs of core, which you see in the second picture there, often 3.05 meters in length. And so what would happen here, the drillers go down, they drill the core, they bring it up, they give it to you, and you take a picture of it and give a geological description of what you see. And things you're looking for is what is the parent material, I guess other types of material in it, like how much clay, silt, its plasticity, its hardness, whether it's oxidized or unoxidized, the color, any sort of just what you see there. And most of the time when you are drilling a hole, you have a target depth that you're going to. And so it's best to kind of keep in mind where you think you are. Like when you are drilling in a place, you will have kind of a sense of the order and the different lithologies that you will be encountering. And so a lot of my work does tend to be environmental. And so say you're wanting to install a piezometer in some certain aquifer, and say it's roughly 30 meters down. So you'll be drilling down until you hit that aquifer or what you think it is. And then lots of the times you'll be installing a piezometer so that you can collect a groundwater sample from it, which is what you see in that other picture there. That's a newly installed piezometer with a pump that I have set up for it, and it's have some hose down there that the pump is jerking up or up and down, and that's going to bring up the water so I can collect the groundwater sample there. And with the sample, you're maybe looking for, I guess, whatever it's all project dependent. So it's whatever the goal was at that time, but it could be general chemistry. It could be looking for hydrocarbons. Lots of the times after you do install a well with that, you'll be doing like hydraulic conductivity tests. So lots of the times you'll put down a data logger and create a disturbance in the water. And with that, with the hydraulic conductivity, you'll be able to figure out how fast something could be moving, like say a contaminant, like say there is a spill or there is a mine there and they're worried about contaminating this certain area. You can go and figure out, where the contamination is, maybe delineating it off, and with the hydraulic conductivity, how fast that contamination may be moving. There are many rewards with this type of occupation. Like I have flex time, which means I can work my own hours as much or as little as I want in a day, as long as I'm getting done what needs to be done. You can't just take time off and never show up. Really, that's only when you're in the office, though. When you're in the field, you you can't just stop a program. You are typically working, I'd say, 12 hours a day, and you are in charge of the subcontractors that you have in site. Like say it's a drilling program. You are the supervisor and a boss man on site for that. There's the ability to work overtime and bank hours to take extended vacations if you want. Like currently I have about 250-ish banked hours right now, which is just from this past year. And it's just nice. Like say you work you're away for 2 weeks doing a drilling program and you come back, you want to take time off. Well, you can take a couple weeks off with your bank time, and that's without touching your vacation time that you also accumulate. So that's definitely really nice, and I take advantage of that. You get to see parts of the country that most people never get to see. That was one of the things that really drew me to this line of work. Like I've gotten to see all over northern Saskatchewan. It's much more beautiful than what people realize. I like being in the outdoors. Like my first summer job in university, a float plane would drop myself off, plus the geologist and another student, and we would live in a tent and wherever we were. And like we each had our own individual tents, and then we had a main kitchen tent where we would keep the food and do other work such as data entry. And there's no cell service or anything like that. So but you got to go fishing every night if you wanted to. Just the scenery, just being outdoors and being in a place where most people never get to see. I just always thought that was really cool. We got to go work up in Nunavut, the Yukon, BC, Alberta, all over the place. It's a mix of office and field work, which I think is a great thing. If I were to sit behind a computer all day and do the same type of work all the time, it would get very repetitive and very boring. I enjoy working outside. But on the flip side, if you're outside away doing field projects all the time, you don't ever get to be home. You miss out on a home life. And so having a job that is a mix of office and field work, I think that's a great bonus. You get to gain a wide variety of skills and you get to chart your own career path. If you want to stay out working in the field, for as long as you can, that makes you very valuable to companies, because most people like just working in the field a little bit and then moving on to office work as soon as they can. But there's just so many different avenues you can go with a career like mine. If you want to go more into project management, you can do that. If you just want to stay on and kind of become more of a technical specialist in your field, you can do that. You can become a manager of people. You can work your way up, the chain of the company, all the way up to, like, at my last company, one of the executives was a geologist who started off doing what I was doing. It completely depends on where you want to go. The challenges of the occupation: you can be away from home for long stretches of time. Normally, with my job anyways, you're not normally away for any longer than, say, 3 weeks. That would be considered a very long stint. And 3 weeks working every day while you're there, there's no days off while you're in the field. It would just completely mess everything up, because then the drillers would have to take time off too. And the client, they're paying for your food, your hotel, or wherever you're staying. They're not going to want to be paying for anything if you're just taking a day off. So you can be working long periods away from home. And while you're doing that, you're working probably 12 to 14 hours a day, every day. And that can get very tiring, and you can miss out on a lot of things in your own personal life too. And another, I guess, con is the schedules can often change last minute, which does make it hard to plan things in your personal life. It's happened to me many times when you have something planned and then, say, drill rig breaks down, or the weather looks bad, or the client, I guess, tells you last second that they're not quite ready for you to come out, or something came up with one of the locates, and then you need to postpone the project, which isn't as easy as what it sounds, because you have to postpone it to a time that makes it work with everyone else's schedule. Because say you hire on some subcontractors, some drillers, and they assume you're going to work, from this time to this time. They likely have a different job booked immediately afterwards. And so you changing the schedule on your job kind of messes them up, or it could potentially mess them up for the next job that they have. And so you just kind of have to come to a compromise and what works best for everyone. Salary and benefits. I said that the salary can range from maybe $60,000 starting off. And that would completely vary on the company too, and what you're able to negotiate, and I guess how much they want you, or how in demand juniors are. And you can make anywhere up to $200,000, I guess, if you wanted to I guess, be like a lead, say, hydrogeologist or technical specialist. You could even go more if you decide to go the corporate route and climb up the corporate ladder. Um, some places offer time and a half overtime. Some places offer single time overtime. That can really impact your salary as well. I currently do get time and a half overtime right now, which is great. And I never used to. This is the first time when I did. And that makes a huge difference when you're away working 12 hours a day, every day for a couple weeks at a time. That really adds up. Um, Most companies offer great benefits, flex time, like if you're in consulting anyways, flex time with working hours, and the ability to bank overtime so you can take time off at your convenience. Now, say you're working, maybe, say, directly for the client, and you'd probably be more of a salary position then, and with actual set hours that you work. So flex time probably wouldn't work for you. Say if you were working in exploration at your exploration camp up, say, in northern Saskatchewan, you'd be on more of a defined schedule, I guess. Maybe perhaps 3 weeks on, 1 week off is pretty common. And so a benefit like that probably wouldn't work or what wouldn't be offered to you if you were in that situation. But for me in consulting, that's what I have. I'd say most places would offer pension plans, and a typical work hours when I'm in Saskatoon would be from 8 to 4:30, but I'm likely not going to be in the office at 8 a.m. if I'm in Saskatoon, to be completely honest. I do take full advantage of working whatever hours I want, as long as it's generally within work hours. Like, say you wanted to show up at 9 or 10 o'clock, as long as you're getting done everything that you need to. And, like that's considered to be okay. In this line of work, because the schedule can change so often, I think that's kind of why they're a bit more lenient with that. Because if I'm away doing a drilling project and I start at 6:30 in the morning and I go till 6:30 in the evening, and then you go back to your hotel room and you have to do like a daily summary write up, that that's a lot of time, and that's a lot of work, and doing that consistently for long periods of time. So it's almost kind of like your reward to be able to work what you want when you are in the office and not doing that. And say you're a project manager and you're in charge of a project that's currently ongoing, you could be contacted at any point in time. There's been many times I've been doing a night shift and we're about to do an install, like say we're putting in a production well or just a piezometer. It's just good practice to kind of take your notes, go over where you think the install should be, and then contact your project manager to kind of verify that's where it is. And so my project manager has gotten many calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, just to kind of go over, say you did run down the geophysics logger, to kind of get us a sense of what's there. Cause that's something that we do often too. If you drill a hole and you know what is there is what you say is there, from your notes that you wrote up from it coming in. But another kind of tool you can have is this geophysics logger that you can throw down, and it kind of just throws off gamma rays, and you can kind of get a sense of the different types of lithologies. And it maybe, I guess, can make things more precise. Like, it's just a tool to add with your notes. Like, it's not going to give any description, but you can tell, when something is much more clay heavy or a sand, or if it's saturated or not with that. And the depth there is pretty accurate, whereas sometimes the depth is can be maybe slightly off when you're just going off of what the drillers bring you. Because say they're going down and taking up a 3 meter run to bring that to you, it could, maybe the recovery isn't 100%. Maybe you're only getting 80% of that run back when you're there. And so it does make it hard to be exactly precise with where you are. And so throwing down the geophysics logger is a really good way, I guess, of tightening up your notes. Anyways, kind of just a little side rant there, but with a job like consulting, you can be on call basically 24/7. Which some people like and some people don't, but it all just completely depends on what you and your project manager have worked out. Educational requirements. There were no specific high school requirements that I could think of, but I would say it is best to complete science classes. And much as I did not like it, probably your calculus classes too. I have a Bachelor of Science in Geology. Some people do go and get their masters, and you can get a PhD if you would like. I just currently have a Bachelor's of Science, and I'm not sure if I will go back to school to further that. It's kind of undecided at this point. Similar degrees would include geological engineering or environmental science. If you're working in Saskatchewan, you will have to become a member of APEGS, which is the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Saskatchewan. It's just the professional organization, I guess, that regulates what engineers and geoscientists do. It kind of make sure that you maintain a certain level of, I guess, competence and being ethical with everything that you do. And if you lived in a different province, each province has their own version of APEGs. Like Alberta has a different one. Everywhere would, but to be a professional in this field, you do have to become a member of the professional regulating body. So my journey, I originally went into geology because I wanted a job with a sense of adventure, to do something different and to see remote places that people hardly get to see. At the time, I did not know anybody in this line of work, which maybe would have helped in getting jobs, but I quickly learned that networking is very important for creating work opportunities. Get your name out there. You know, if people enjoyed working with you, you can use them as a reference. That becomes invaluable. I went into arts and science at the University of Saskatchewan, and I got accepted into the geology program there. I was very fortunate to land great summer jobs in the field while I was in university. That doesn't always get to happen. And many people, I guess, don't even try to get a job in their field because they're more comfortable maybe going back home for the summer and just getting any type of job, which is fine. You know, you do you, but it makes it so much easier afterwards to get a job in your field when you're done school. If you're able to get a similar type of job while you're going to school, you have something to put on your resume, because there's always only going to be a limited number of spots afterwards in your field, and depending on market conditions too. And if you can get anything that'll put you over and above, you know, the average person who will also be applying for those jobs, that that just gives you a leg up. I worked for the Saskatchewan Geological Survey for 2 summers. And I mentioned this before. Be dropped off by a float plane with 2 other people and live in a tent in the forest by the Northwest Territories border. And we were just mapping bedrock. And I really enjoyed that job. It was something totally different for me. It was something brand new. I'd never done anything like that before. Um, the work itself was interesting, walking around like the Canadian Shield is just fully exposed up there. But it's just the lifestyle. You know, you're living in a tent. You got to cook your own food. Every 2 weeks, a float plane would come and drop us off more food. And we did have a generator with us, and we could have a fridge, and so we ate very well. And how that worked, there was always 3 of us, one geologist and 2 students, and the geologist would go out to go mapping for that day, and students would go with him, and the other student would remain in camp and do data entry from the previous day's work. And then, you know, just maintain camp, make meals and stuff. And there's always a bit of downtime to kind of do whatever. So if you wanted to go fishing, well, the fishing in northern Saskatchewan is absolutely fantastic. And I did that work for 2 summers. And would I want to do that as a career right now, where I had to be away all summer long? Um, I don't know if I would, just because I'm kind of comfortable with where I am now. But at the time, when I was, you know, 18, 19 years old, that was a lot of fun. But I guess on the flip side, that is your entire summer. You know, there are no breaks in the middle. Maybe, you know, things have changed or things can be worked out, but it is a lot of effort to bring a plane, and expensive to go get a plane, pick people up, and just bring them back, you know, just for a bit of a break. Like stuff like that just doesn't really happen. And you do miss out on an awful lot when you're doing that. So it's definitely not for everybody. But at the time, I really enjoyed doing that. And my other summer job I had was working for Ariba, up at a uranium exploration camp in Nunavut. And that was really cool too. So we'd fly from Saskatoon to Winnipeg and then get on a smaller plane to go up to Rankin Inlet. And then from Rankin, we would go to Baker Lake, which was the nearest community by where we were working. And there's no roads or anything where we were going. And so we'd have to helicopter in maybe 45 minutes to where the camp was. And I had never flown in a helicopter before up until that point in time. And turns out when there's no roads and helicopter is the only way to go, you fly in helicopters quite a bit there. And so there is a drilling operation going on there. There is multiple drill rigs going at once. And so every morning, the helicopters would go pick up the core from the drill rigs and from what they did the previous day and overnight because they were just constantly going. And then they would bring it to us and we would just log the core. And that was pretty much our day, just kind of create a map of where everything was, the delineating the deposits. And sometimes we take samples to send back to a lab. And that was very interesting doing that type of work there. And the even just being in Nunavut, like it's just something that most people don't get to do. And I just found that very exciting. 24-hour daylight, like that's insane. You go out at 2 in the morning and it looks like 6 o'clock in the evening here. Like that was cool. One thing, and just walking on the tundra, you had to avoid that as much as you could around our camp, but it's like walking in a sponge. And the different wildlife you get to see, herds of muskox and caribou just going by, it definitely is an experience. I guess I did learn that I did not want to fully pursue exploration as a career, mainly because of the work-life balance. Um, Long periods away from home and typical schedules. I guess when I was doing that in Nunavut, it was a 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off schedule. But typically from other places, it is a 3 weeks in, 1 week out schedule. You are paid very well for doing so. The salary is great, but you are missing out a lot in your personal life with doing so. I was fortunate enough to land a job after university working for SNC Lavalin doing hydrogeological consulting work for various clients. And when I got the job, it was kind of funny because the interview was more so just, oh, we see you work for the Saskatchewan Geological Survey. Who did you work for there? And so it turns out the people interviewing me also did that work growing up, or when they were in university. And um it it yeah, just kind of further examples of sometimes it's just who networking. If they see that you worked in this place and that's something that they've done as well, and if you can survive that. I described one of my summers for them, and one of the people interviewing me, she's like, if you survive that, you can survive anything that we'll throw at you. um so that worked out. So I was lucky that I was able to get a job out after school. That wasn't the case for many people. When I was finishing university, the job market wasn't as good as what it is now. Just commodity prices were a lot lower, and I guess that really impacts, I guess, how many new jobs that there could be available for people. Um, so yeah, I got a job with SNC Lavalin. The consultant pay, I would say, is a bit lower than if I would have stayed doing exploration work, but I got to be home a lot more and have more variety with my work. So being a consultant, it's never the same thing twice. You're completely project dependent on what you want to do. So that's why it's kind of hard to say exactly what you do, because it depends on what the projects are at the time. Um, you still can have long periods of time away from home working in the field, doing this type of work. But overall, I'd say the work life balance is much better. And there are opportunities to move up to doing, say, more reporting work or project manager work or whatever it is that you're interested in doing. You can stay working in the field more if you want. You can control the direction that your career goes in. And so when I started off with SNC Lavalin, I was doing a lot of field work at the time. But I enjoyed that and I wanted to build up my banked hours. Like I got to around like 500 banked hours. Like it's pretty great. One of the cons when I was doing that was I was not getting time enough overtime. So it was all just single time, which really sucked. But you you're working lots of hours. It still does not take long to go and build that up. So yeah, I was doing lots of drilling projects for lot of potash work, I guess, with that. We are doing like pump tests for various clients. So with that, you're installing this production well, and then you got to figure out like how much water can you get out of this aquifer. And so you have a bunch of other wells that you drill around in various places nearby. And if you pump a whole bunch of water out of this production well, and you can monitor how much the water goes down in these other places over, such an extended period of time, and then afterwards when you stop and you measure the recovery, how long does it take for the water to get back to static in here, you can get a general sense just of what that aquifer can do. And then that information can be used for mines. Like some of the projects I did, there was no mine there. The client was just considering, maybe this is a potential future spot to put in a new mine. Well, they need to know what their water source could be. Mines require water to run. How much would be available to use, and almost just as importantly, would it affect anybody else? Say there's communities nearby or farmers nearby. Are you going to be potentially affecting their water supply too? So I've done lots of work kind of in that vein. Lots of environmental type work, like say there's some contamination coming in from the mine. Where is the contamination going? How bad is it? How deep down does it go? Like what aquifer units is it in? Where could that potentially be spreading? And what can we do about it? Just without getting into specifics, but that's kind of a lot of what I've done and what I am doing right now. Actually, another thing I'm doing right now, I'm doing a secondment for a different mine out by the Manitoba border there. Just kind of filling in for a mine engineer role, which just for a half-year period, every second week there. A year ago, I didn't think I'd ever be doing something like that. Not gonna lie, it's been kind of cool and very interesting just seeing how things operate from the client's side of things, because I've interacted with these people a lot doing other projects, but always just from our point of view, the consulting point of view, not so much the just seeing the inner workings of how a mine would run and just what their typical day looks like, what their typical tasks would be. So that's been very interesting doing that this winter. Consulting work, I would say, in my experience anyways, has been less vulnerable to swings in commodity prices. And say if you were doing exploration work, like say you're working up at a uranium exploration place and then the price of uranium went in the gutter, there's a good chance that some people would be losing their jobs there. But with me anyways, because you're doing such a wide range of stuff, it can really insulate you if things go down. Like since I've started working about 6 or 7 years ago doing this, there's been absolutely no shortage of work whatsoever. But that's never a guarantee. With SNC Lavalin, I have been able to do projects all over Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta, BC, Ontario, and the Yukon. I would say my favorite project that I've done, just from scenery wise, was at the BC Yukon border. It was actually that specific project was a gravy gig. I was pretty much just watching some people mixing dirt to kind of clean up this spill along the Alaska Highway. And I got just the scenery around. It was absolutely beautiful. And I got to stay at this lodge there, and they had natural hot springs nearby. And so every evening I got to go walk and soak in that. And that was it was like a paid vacation, more or less. It's sometimes how you go and look at it when you're away in the field and the work isn't too terribly stressful. But sometimes it can be very stressful though. another thing you kind of have to watch for if you're away doing a work project is kind of scope creep when you're out there, and then suddenly, the client wants something done differently, kind of tweaking what it is that you planned that you're doing there. You got to be very careful with that, because that can completely throw off the budget or the length of time it can take to do work. And can lead to the complications if you're in a remote place and it's not as easy to get new supplies in for whatever it is being asked. But most of the time, you have a project, you have a kickoff meeting, you have your scope of work, you know exactly what it is that you're doing, you plan everything out ahead of time, never show up unprepared to do your job, because that would just not be good. Everyone's kind of depending on you when you're there to know what it is that you're doing, to know what the overall goal of the project is, and to have everything on site to complete that. And so last year I did switch companies from SNC Lavalin, and I now work for Clifton Engineering, and I am doing the same type of work that what I was doing before. I would say I'm doing less field work now compared to what I was before, and I'm instead doing more project management and reporting work. And right now I'm very happy with the switch. It's a great culture, and just interesting work. So as I said, for opportunities, the job market can often vary due to commodity prices, but right now, anyways, the current job market is strong, with many companies looking to hire. This was not the case when I first graduated from university, and it was originally difficult to find a job in my field. I was fortunate in that I was able to do so, but I know many people who I graduated with were not able to get a job in their field and just went on to doing something completely unrelated to geology. I would say there are many chances to advance in the workplace, and you alone are in charge of where you want your career to go, whether it be more field-based, maybe more of like a geotechnical or hydrogeological. Like there's different avenues you can go. You can go into more project management. You can manage people. If you decide to want to be more business orientated and climb the corporate ladder, there have been many people do that with degrees like mine, starting off with work like mine. And as also previously mentioned, I would say related occupations would include being a geological engineer or an environmental scientist. Geological engineer would be, I guess, more geotechnical, I guess, than what I do. And lots, they could be involved in, say, the construction of a slurry wall or something like that. An environmental scientist would be just have more of a environmental focus compared to what I would do. Work-life balance. This occupation can be challenging with maintaining a good work-life balance, especially at the start. You're young, you're you're hungry, you want to look good to your new company. So like with me, for example, when I started off, I could have said no to some projects and have more time off, but I thought maybe it would look bad if I were to say no. And so I said yes to pretty much everything thrown my way, which was a lot of fun, but I worked a lot of overtime hours during the stretch. And you got to be careful that you're not taken advantage of in that sense. So one thing that I would tell younger me is set your boundaries, have your boundaries, and don't be afraid to say no. If you want time off and you need time off, you can. And if you have an event coming up, like say a birthday or something like that, that you don't want to miss, just mention it to your supervisor and try to make it work with your schedule. If you're doing a job and it's not that terribly far away, maybe you can be subbed out with someone else. Or if you're just doing a job, like say you're collecting water samples or something where you're just working solo by yourself, maybe it would be okay for you to go home and have that and take that time off for whatever event it is to do. And you just have to be very mindful, though, of being fiscally responsible. When you're doing a job, you're given a budget and you have to do the job within the budget. And you do get paid to travel. And so you can't really go off 5 hours away to a mine site. And if you just want to take the weekend off just because they got to drive back, that's a cost to the client. And to drive there and back, the hours it would take to do so, they're always charged for the vehicle too, and your per diem, your food when you're out there. So you just always have to keep that in mind too. But that is something that I kind of wish I would have known, or I guess just not be afraid to stand up for myself more. So when I was starting off, that when you want time off or need time off, just talk to your supervisor about it. And it doesn't look weak. It's most of the time people will not frown upon that whatsoever. So yeah, I would say at the start of your career doing what I would do, you're definitely in the field a lot more. And as you gain more experience and gain more skills, you can generally move into roles that require less field work, such as maybe being more technical, working on the reports. Every time you do a drilling project or any sort of project, there always has to be a report written up about that. The background, why you're there, the methodology, specifically what you did, results section, say you took a whole bunch of soil samples or groundwater samples, there's always a report, a results section, and then a discussion section, like just discussing your findings and what you've done. Yeah, you can move into, as I said, more management, go climb the corporate ladder. It's really your career is what you make of it. I've been told that many times at work, not me specifically, but just in meetings in general, by our leader of our company. If you're not happy with where your career is going, I guess it's up to you to talk to your manager, supervisor, and try to mitigate that. And the world is your oyster. This picture here. It was taken up at that project I mentioned by the BC Yukon border. And this is right by my work site. So I got to drive past this every day to and from the work site. And it's just beautiful. I like nature.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too tough to take, Kyle.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of comments or questions. Really good presentation, by the way. Thank you very much. I'm glad when you talked about your journey, because at the beginning you talked about the job description. I still wasn't 100% sure why do you do these things. You were talking about the drilling and what you do in a day. So I think it's more clear now, though, that you're looking for water samples for mining companies so they have a source for water, and also what effect they're having on the water supply, that kind of thing. That's, in a nutshell, that's most of what you would be doing this for.
It all completely depends on the project. The goal is like, it's all project dependent. Like, there's not one project that I've been doing my entire career. But that is a lot of what I have done, I guess. Being in hydrogeology, working with more water bearing units. And, there's been projects I've done where they're planning on putting in a mine there, or considering it anyways. It's just in exploration stages, and you need to figure stuff out. Like, what is the water supply? How far down? How much could you pump out of that aquifer to maintain? Because you can't run the aquifer dry. Like, say you start a mine operation and you pump too much water out of it, and then you eventually run out. That causes issues. And you cannot affect third parties. You cannot affect communities. You cannot affect the farmers. That may be anybody else using water in that area too.
Yeah.
And so that's very interesting. I remember one project I did my first year. It was a 2-week pumping test. So we were pumping that production well for 2 weeks solid at a pretty significant rate. And I was going around to these other boreholes, like piezometers that we drilled and installed. And then we had data loggers down there, and it was just taking water level measurements. And it was so cool to see when you're pumping here, the influence and the direction that had. It's just very interesting.
Yeah, I
But
think
like other, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think it's, a lot of people don't understand what goes into some of that stuff. Like, you just think, oh, they're going to put up $1 billion uranium mine somewhere. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that has to take place, like the work that you do.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of environmental concerns too with contamination.
Yeah.
I would say a lot of my work is is environmentally focused. So you have a mine going on. Lots of the times mines were created back in the days before the environment was given much consideration. And they're kind of dealing with consequences now regarding that. And there's so many regulations from the government too.
Yeah.
That there has to be so much testing done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always lots of work with that.
Yeah, I can see that. So I've got a few other things here. You mentioned that university field experience, those 2 summer things. Do you know, like, does the U of S geology program still do that? Do you know, or have you heard?
Oh, that wasn't through the program. Those
Oh,
were
I
just
see.
private.
Those are just opportunities that came up. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
although the Saskatchewan Geological Survey, they're always very good with advertising at the university, and they will come to the university, or they did when I was
yeah,
there, and I can't imagine that they would have stopped doing that, and they would give a presentation, kind of what you would expect the summer to be like.
yeah,
And they actually hire quite a few students. Like I went out with my geologist, but there are many other sites that they go to as well.
yeah. That's one takeaway I hope students get from this session too, is to take advantage of those opportunities, those programs, because I think, like you said,
Definitely.
led to you think it might have led to maybe your first job because you had that experience.
Oh,
And
100%. Like I would definitely say to students out there, try your best to get a job in the field.
yeah,
Um, just it helps you out so much afterwards. It's something good you can put on your resume. It's networking. Lots of the times you get jobs through who you know.
yeah. Well, then, like you said, in your case, it was a connection to the people that were hiring you because they'd done a similar thing. Yeah, and that's just,
Hmm.
you feel like they feel like you're one of them.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing you said on your takeaway here, like you said right at the beginning, like when you first went out there as a young college university graduate, you're working with older, subcontractors, that are probably, some cases, maybe 20, 30 years older than you.
Yeah.
Said that fake it until you make it. I think that, from what I get from that is that's just part of the experience building. You have to build up experience somehow. So you're going to be raw at the beginning, but you get better at it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I just remember thinking at the time how strange it is that, I'm much younger than a lot of these people. However, I'm their supervisor, I'm the boss man at site, I'm the client to them. And, whatever it is you say, that's what they do. And that can be very intimidating. And you also have to learn that having good relationships with your subcontractors is great, but you also have to be able to enforce rules too. And safety concerns, safety is paramount. That is something that you cannot neglect whatsoever. And if you see somebody doing something that you would consider unsafe, you have to be able to go to them and remedy the situation. And when you're brand new working in the field, and that person is older and more experienced than you, that could be difficult to do,
Yeah, and I
but
can
it has to be done.
yeah, and I can see where it's intimidating. Yeah, I can see that. Another point, I think real good point you made is that you mentioned it a few times, actually chart your own career path, and I think that's
Mhm.
such an important message for young students or students entering the workforce in the next few years, is that it's job descriptions aren't just tight, like that you just have to, this is all I can do with this training. You kind of said that there's ways to mold it and shape it the way you want it, and I think that's really just an important message I wanted to bring up, and point out that
Mhm.
you've been experiencing that yourself. So that's great.
Mhm. No one's going to mold it for you. If you're not happy with what you're doing, you're the one who has to speak up.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks a lot, Kyle. Appreciate that. That's I've not that I could go out and do what you're doing right now as a hydrogeologist, but I know a lot more about hydrogeology than when I started this session, because I really didn't know much of anything about it. So thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. No, it's a pleasure.